Hey, thanks for joining me for the first vlog for kindergarten. So today I wanted to look at cluster one, which should take approximately 2 to 3 weeks. Guys, this is really the meat and potatoes of it all, and it's really about building that mindset of what's math, right? Also, what does it mean to talk about math? What does it mean to explore math, to ask questions, um, and really just how to be a mathematician. So when we look at cluster one, we are also starting with these four standards. So measurement and data one and two, sum of three, that's why it has an asterisk by it, and KG1. So let's get into some of the standards here. So this is the document, understanding the cluster, and I really like this part right here where it says not necessarily mastered. Right? This means that we're still giving students time to figure all this out. They don't have to get it in 2 to 3 weeks. We are going to continue to revisit a lot of this information throughout. Um, so, so don't freak out if they don't have it all in the 2 to 3 week time period. Also, the other reason why this piece is struck out is because we will not be using that during this cluster. Okay, so in this measurement and data strand, we have describing measurable attributes. So the qualities of the objects. Then we have in MD2 compare two objects. So really the difference between one and two is here we're talking about a single object. Oh, my handwriting is horrible. And here we're actually beginning to compare. So starting off with two objects, and then if you feel like your students are really making some big gains, maybe then try three to extend it. But otherwise, just start off with two to compare. Okay, so then we're looking at MD MD3, where we're classifying objects into given categories. So we'll come back to a minute what those categories are. And then now we're going to get into some geometry. And guys, geometry is really, really important and often overlooked. It does begin to build students' spatial reasoning skills and their ability to generalize. I can't emphasize enough the importance of geometry. So this is really the beginning of the way that students look at the world, right? So this is super, super, super important. All right, so I'll get off my geek train for just a minute there. Okay, so in this cluster, we are beginning establishing a foundation for all mathematical work by creating a positive and respectful climate for learning. I like this word discourse. That means students are going to be expected to talk about topics, right? To reveal their understandings and their misunderstandings. This discourse supports robust learning. This right here is super, uber important. Developing and supporting their language development. Also their social skills. Guys, these kids are their best resource. They will learn so much from one another. So building this community of learners is super important. Okay, so again, we're going to talk about exploring attributes of shapes. Also looking at describing those attributes, comparing objects, using words like longer, shorter, more or less, bigger or smaller, heavier or lighter, softer or harder. just to talk about this more or less, we don't really care right now if they're talking about numbers or quantity. If they are, great. If not, don't push them in that direction yet. Students are recognizing that things can be alike and different. They can sort objects. They're going to build and use their shape vocabulary informally. So we're not giving vocabulary tests here, right? Throughout all of their work here, they're going to begin this informal vocabulary about shapes. I really like this positional vocabulary. Positional meaning just like where someone is in a given context. So Bill is standing behind Susan. Amy is first in line. Positional. Students get to know each other by posing questions and collecting data about themselves and their surroundings. These are some important considerations, and I think I just talked about this. Neither counting nor geometry is the focus of this cluster. So some students may begin to naturally count. That's fine. You can use this as a way to collect evidence about what they already know and their understanding of geometry. But again, you don't have to push it. So to do that informally, you can ask them questions such as, well, how many cubes did you use to build your tower? Use words like how many triangles or how many green triangles. And so that way you're just collecting some information, nothing, nothing important. We're not assessing them, just collecting some data. Okay. Formal development of geometry vocabulary is not a focus because we're just getting into the sorting and whatnot. We're going to come back to the formal discussion of this vocabulary in cluster 4. So again, don't push it, just sort of let it happen. So what we want is much of this cluster to be spent in setting up some math routines and expectations. I love this last part, what it means to think and talk mathematically in your classroom. Okay, just in case you haven't seen this, the unpacking document, I think we kind of went through some of this just a minute ago, but just a few things worth mentioning here. Talking again about attributes. Shoe is heavy. It's also really long. They may start comparing objects bigger or smaller. But through experiences and observations, they are going to learn to discriminate. It's a big word, right? Meaning tell the difference between objects. Okay. This part, pretty key. I don't want anybody to stress out. We're not talking about measuring objects with standard or non-standard units, just using this very informal vocabulary. The feather is light, it's easy to lift, all of that stuff. You can tell I'm getting really crazy with the highlighter here. Okay, going back to MD2, here we're talking about comparing two objects, right? If we have this crayon and pencil, we're looking at comparing it to the straw. So the crayon is shorter than the straw, or the pencil is longer than the straw. And you see this importance, they're lined up, because if not, we would have, I don't know, let's say this was the crayon, this is the straw, and then this is the pencil. If they're not all lined up, then it wouldn't, meaning if their ends don't line up, then it's not, we can't really compare them. We don't really know what's longer than the other. So that's why it's important to make sure our objects are lined up end to end. Now, it doesn't matter which end. It just matters that the ends are lined up to one another. And then going to MD3. Now is, again, beginning where we're talking about classifying objects into categories. I'm going to strike this part out. But just really classifying them, sorting them together. Maybe here we talk about their attributes. Again, not necessarily talking about numbers. So here's where you have to tease out the piece where they're talking about numbers. We're talking about similarities and differences between objects. And you can use color. They can use shapes, right? Now, if the kids are using, if they're counting, that's totally fine. If they're saying this has 1, 2, 3, 4 sides, let them do that, but don't push any of the other students to go in that direction. Also thinking about, well, this may look smaller than this. This shape may look smaller than that shape. We don't have to formally call this a trapezoid or a quadrilateral or this a triangle. Just beginning to sort them out. And again, going back to this geometry standard, just describing shapes, and again, using this big old phrase, positional terms. So looking around the room, where do you see a cone? Excuse me. And again, thinking about 2 and 3 dimensional positions. Okay. Sorry. I wanted to go really quickly to the Google site. If you click on kindergarten, you'll clearly see the year at a glance first. You can continue to scroll through that, or you can go straight to the folder for the instructional frameworks. I'm only taking us here because I wanted to highlight these lessons that are in here. They are phenomenal. So I've already downloaded lesson 1, and I was whoops, just kidding. I recently had lesson 1 up. There it goes. So lesson 1 is the beginning of what is math. And this lesson doesn't necessarily, or does not address the second part of the standard, just describing the objects from the first part. It has all of your student outcomes. Students are expected to model with the mathematics. Not so much you guys, but the students. Reason abstractly, that's because they are describing the objects around them. And quantitatively, they're making sense of all of these things. So here it has some advanced prep work. And I really liked this. It's kind of hiding down here at the bottom. So to introduce the word math, it has a whole sequence here for you. But if you're interested in watching this teacher launch the lesson.
This is my absolute favorite part of the day today because this is math time. And math time is the most important part of the day because math is when we learn about the world around us. We learn about shapes in our world. We learn about numbers in our world. We learn about all types of mathy things in our world. And I wanted to start off by showing you a video to help you know what math is and what math looks like in our world. We just heard Tyler and Elmo talk all about math. Math on their plate. They even ate math. So what I wanted to do right now is I wanted you to talk to your partner. Oh, not yet. I'm going to give you the cue. When I tell you to, you're going to talk to your partner about all the things you heard Tyler and Elmo say about math. So now I want you to tell me some of the things you talked to your partner about. What were some things that you saw Tyler do or Tyler say? My friend back here, yes.
I think that
and let me pause. You keep thinking. Boys and girls, show her that you're listening by looking at her when she talks. Go ahead, please.
they said they have forms.
Yeah, so they were talking about shapes and what shapes look like. Because you know what? Math is, eyes over here. Because math is shapes. was thinking about the shapes in his world, and today I wanted you to have a chance to think about shapes in your world. We're going to take a look at two different shapes. We're going to take a look at this shape right here. This is called a circle. And then there's this shape right here. Yeah, this is a rectangle.
Okay, so that was the first part of the lesson. That's, what we would call the launch. Getting students excited about what we're getting to talk about today, right? So she walks through that, and then we've got the explore phase. So this is where you would allow students time to find and record objects that look like circles and rectangles around the room. This is where they actually kind of get to be mathematicians, and it's nice. So here we've got this table of some observations. So like a student walks around the room, not attempting to find objects. And in this column, you have questions to ask the student that may be just walking around the room. Here is the quick video of the same teacher doing the explore phase of this lesson.
A circle. What did you find that looks like a circle? A table. And how much table? This table? Okay, how do you know this is not a
Because
okay, it has a round shape. All right, go ahead and draw your picture. What is this picture over here? A rectangle. What did you find in the classroom that looks like a rectangle? Did you find something in the room that looks like a rectangle? Well, let's stand up and let's take a look somewhere and see if we can find something. Oh, we can look right over here. Stand up with me and see if you can find something that looks like a rectangle. You see it here.
Okay, I kind of wish we could have seen more of that. But so then once the kids have had a chance to explore individually, then it's coming back together as a group to talk about what they found and what they observed. So this goes into how to provide some interventions, extensions, possible misconceptions and suggestions. So knowing that this was an introductory lesson, that's a great place to start. And then it has the work that comes with the lesson, the student work that comes with the lesson. Just know that this is all on the, in the cluster folder for number 1, for cluster 1, and as well as lesson 2. I will upload the other lessons to the cluster just so it's there. But otherwise, you can just go to Tools for Teachers, Tools for NZ Teachers, Kindergarten, and then we would be under Cluster 1. Here there are up to 6 lessons with some additional information about some center ideas, some exit tickets, some talk move scenarios. So I hope this was helpful in kind of getting you some places to start and understanding a little bit more about what these standards in this cluster are asking us to do. All right. Have a great 2 to 3 weeks.